Hey everybody, welcome to the entrepreneurship class. I've been looking forward to this. Hope you have too. So we'll spend the next term together, really going through these concepts and just having a good time. This is fascinating stuff. And as people who are studying business and management, you'll see that these ideas in the entrepreneurial, they incorporate all the different areas of business. If you think about it as business owners, as ones who use the different tools and ideas from the different fields of business, you'll come to realize that entrepreneurs, kind of ones who are doing it kind of all, maybe to start with, they require all of these different concepts. So this will be a fun class and great material to go through. Today, this week, we're going to kind of introduce some of these key ideas of economics and marketing, some management, some strategy, and then some other resources that exist for people who are interested in doing this. And so, well, let's get started. Okay, also, let me tell you, as you watch this video, I'm going to load it to YouTube. I encourage you maybe to speed up my talking, maybe to 1.25, maybe all the way up to 1.75 speed on your playback, and that'll just make things go through a little faster. When I go back and rewatch videos, I usually speed them up as well. So let's start here. Entrepreneurial economics, just kind of economics 101 that's necessary for those of us who are studying these concepts and those of us who are intending to or currently practicing these concepts. So Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith, 1776. I jokingly say, and I'm doing it right now, that really I could start just about any management class with the idea of division of labor and the wealth of nations. So those who've already done this before and have had Adam Smith, you remember that in chapter 1, where he's describing how nations become wealthy. He describes division of labor. Instead of everybody doing everything that they need in life to live and to thrive, that what we do is we tend to specialize in one or two things, and we get really good at them, and then we take the things that we have above and beyond what we need into a common marketplace and trade. So he talked about the pin making factory, and he described these untrained workers. And an untrained worker, to make a pin, P-I-N, it took about 18 steps. And he said that an untrained worker, one who doesn't do this on a regular basis, in a day could make scarcely one and certainly no more than 20 pins. So scarcely one. So you think that a day's labor is what one pin would cost. He also described a manufactory, a factory that he saw and observed that kind of sparked his curiosity, and he began thinking about this. He saw 10 people working in a factory making pins together, and they weren't doing all 18 steps. They were just doing one or two steps and then combining it all together. Those workers he saw making, he described it in terms of pounds, but the number came out to be about 48,000 pins per day being produced by those 10 workers. So, and that comes about through division of labor. Everybody does one or two things, they become really good at it through dexterity of the workman, no process loss, and the invention of machines. And you can get these humongous gains in productivity. He said that those concepts, those ideas are what leads to nations becoming wealthy. If everybody in a society were to specialize in one or two things and get really good at them, and they were able to do way more than they personally needed themselves, then they could take all that excess into a common marketplace and trade. And so the idea being that there are people out there who find what you've produced desirable and interesting and priced right to want to trade with. So what is the source of a business? Well, it's anything that is wanted or needed in society. Okay, some things are going to be glamorous, and some things may not be so glamorous, but they're necessary. And really, you can have a business doing any of those. That's Adam Smith stuff. So I'll post a link, but I encourage you just to Google it. Adam Smith's Division of Labor, the father of modern day economics. Product and service. So let's make sense of this real quick. Products, services. Products tend to be things that are tangible. If you look around your room, I'm looking in my room right now. I've got a table here. I'm looking at a computer. These are things that are tangible. You can touch them, you can feel them, you can weigh them, you can replicate them. Services tend to be more intangible, where you can't touch them. These are things that people are providing for you. We're doing one right now. I'm talking through this video to you, providing you a service going through these concepts. Products tend to be more standardized. So if you look around the room, you see paint that was produced in mass quantity. You may see some carpet that was produced. You may see some tables and chairs. You may have pens and pencils and notebooks and paper right there. Those were all things that are produced. They're tangible, but they also tend to be relatively standardized. So one pack of paper, one pack of Post-it notes, one laptop computer is going to be pretty much the same as the one that came before it and the one that's coming after it. Standardized. Services tend to be more customized. So if you go to the doctor, you go to a lawyer, you go to an expert to get some help with something, they're going to customize a solution specifically for your needs. So if you're not feeling good, you go to the doctor's going to figure out what your symptoms are and then relate that back to something that might need some addressing and then give you a customized solution on how to fix that. Customized. Services tend to be customized. Now, you can have customized products where you could be, one particular thing made in one specific way and go to an artist or artisan and they would be able to make that for you. But for the most part, standardized products, customized services. And then another dimension on which this differs is you think about the place where it was produced and then the time when it was produced and then when and where it's been consumed in relation to where it was produced. So products can be made somewhere else and then put in boxes and shipped and inventoried and put somewhere else, and consumers can come buy them and then they can take them home and they can consume them at the appropriate time. Okay, so place and time can be different with products. With services, when you go to the doctor, you would hope to get some answers at that moment, that you're getting the help and the solutions at the same time. So just another one of those dimensions on which products and services can be analyzed and seen how they can be a little different. And luxury and necessity. So luxury are those things that tend to be wanted. Necessities are those things that are needed. So you can have luxury products, you can have luxury services, you can have necessity products, you can have necessity services. So as you're thinking about, what would be an idea for a viable business, whether it be a product or a service, that you can make sense of these. Luxury and necessity tends to be measured using a good old economics term, elasticity. What happens to the change in quantity as the price changes? So those things where price changes a lot, but demand doesn't change a whole lot, those are regarded as inelastic. They're not changing. That's characteristic of a necessity. Those things that do change a lot, as price changes, the quantity is severely altered, whether it be price drops, a lot more people want it, price goes up, a lot fewer people want it. That would be characteristic of a luxury. So as you're getting into these ideas and thinking about source of a viable business that you could take into a marketplace and trade with others, you got to realize where you are on those dimensions and how changes could affect you. All right, strategy. So strategy, first time I was exposed to it really that I remember in grad school was in a discussion of goal setting. And the concept was brought up, can you set a goal without really an analysis of how you're going to get there? So, strategy, here's where we are, here's where we want to be. How do we get there? What is the strategy? What are the steps and procedures? So some of these core ideas, maybe you've already had a strategic management class, corporate level strategy, what business should we be in? And the Boston Consulting Group matrix is one of my favorites, kind of a classic in that. So if you're thinking about building a portfolio, and really the BGC, the way I was introduced to it, you're building a portfolio of businesses, but you could really also pull it down a level and build your portfolio of products and services. So what are those stars? What are those cash cows? What are the dogs? Maybe things that you need to get rid of. And then what are the question marks? And so within your portfolio, you want stars, you want some cash cows, you want to develop those question marks and maybe divest of the dogs. So again, entrepreneurship, what are we offering? Where are these things within this bigger portfolio? Business level strategy. Once we've chosen our business, once we've chosen what we're going to do, how do we compete? I love the Miles and Snow typology. So they talk about a prospector. So a prospector is one who's always looking for the new opportunity. They're going to strike it rich before anyone else does. Is that your strategy? The analyzer is the second one. The analyzer strategy says, I want to jump on a new opportunity, but I want to be more certain first. So I'm going to sit back and analyze. And when the time comes, I'll be ready to jump or maybe back off if it turns out that that's not the best place to go. The defender strategy. I'm real happy with where I am. And so I'm going to defend this and make sure others don't come in and try to take away my market share, my business from me. And then differentiation, kind of at the heart of all this is differentiation. How do you make yourself different and appealing to others? In that big common marketplace that Adam Smith talked about, what is it that's going to draw people to you for the exchange instead of someone else? Let's pull differentiation right here. Okay, so this is Porter. Porter talked about, Michael Porter's well known in the strategy area and the management area. These are the two that I pulled out specifically for this presentation. So the generic strategies. How do you compete? How do you make yourself different? How do you make yourself appealing to others in the marketplace as opposed to your competitors? So cost leadership, that I'm gonna be appealing to others based on my cost. Okay, differentiation. There's something special about me. I can do things, I can offer things. I have characteristics that others don't have. And so that's why you need to come trade with me. The focus strategy. This is really more of a niche strategy. So with the niche strategy, it says I'm not going to be everything to everyone, but I'm going to try to be everything to a smaller group. So you pick a niche and then you appeal and cater specifically to them. And then he also kind of warned about that stuck in the middle. The stuck in the middle, these are the companies that can't really move into one of those other areas very cleanly, and they're really just kind of stuck with nothing special to differentiate themselves. Okay, the 5 forces model, this says we need to analyze our marketplace, and particularly our competitors. So with competitive rivalry, what is it like in the marketplace? Is this kind of a tough, cutthroat type market with a lot of competitors who are all trying to get the attention of those consumers? Or is there not a lot of competitive rivalry? We need to understand that before moving forward with our strategy. The threat of new entrants, is this easy for others to get into, or is it relatively difficult for others to get into? So to be aware of that. The threat of substitutes. So that idea of substitute meaning I offer this, what if someone comes along and offers something very similar? Will people jump over and do that instead? Or what happens if I have to raise my prices? Are people going to bail on me and go for something else? The power of buyers, the power of suppliers. Again, just sort of some of those key assumptions of economics that you have many buyers, many suppliers within a free market who can't influence the market. Well, what if you're in a market where there are just a few buyers and maybe one or two could alter the market? That could be dangerous. And the same with suppliers as well. If there are not many suppliers and one of them has a problem with distribution because of COVID, and now all of a sudden I can't get this stuff, and that might be a big problem. Or might you be able to jump to another supplier? So those are Porter's models. Both of them kind of, I relate them kind of to strategy. Things to be aware of as you're figuring out how to get from where you are to where you want to be. In talking about differentiation, let's look at this idea, a unique selling proposition. Again, one of those marketing concepts that comes right out of economics as well. Unique selling proposition. What is it that's unique about you? A lot of different dimensions. It could be, your location. It could be something particular, the way you offer it. It could be features that are offered. It could be a personality. It could be the way you deliver. It could be, price. Many different things. What is it that makes you unique in the marketplace? What is it that would entice others to come do business with you and not your competitors? So if you can develop a unique selling proposition, you can turn it into a form of competitive advantage. Competitive advantage is a way that you are different and that you can use to set yourself apart in the marketplace to make yourself different and have others choose you to come do business with. Monopolistic competition kind of sounds like an oxymoron. Monopoly in a competitive marketplace. And doing the research for this presentation, the economics said it's where perfect substitutes don't exist. There are not perfect substitutes. Substitute being that, I offer this thing and then my price changes. Something happens, a competitor comes in with something similar that can kind of fulfill those needs and wants and desires in a similar way, but maybe they can do it at a better price. Would I lose customers to them? So monopolistic competition. In my mind, I kind of draw back to the idea of canoeing when I lived in Florida, out on lakes, and lakes in particular, but rivers. But if you think about a lake being a big body with kind of a defined shore, a lot of times we see the shore as kind of a smooth shore, but really there are little nooks and crannies and little inlets and maybe places where tributaries are coming out. The lake shares the same water. It's one lake. But if you look at the edges, there are little places where you can kind of go back and rest and hide. And it's in a little cove or a little inlet is set apart and different from everything else. So in my mind, I kind of see if I would block off one of those little inlets or coves, that could be my own little place within this bigger monopolistic competition. You offer something that others can't or won't do. And by doing that, it makes you different. If you're the only one offering that within this competitive market and it's desirable, you're going to have a monopoly in that little nook. Monopolistic competition, where they're not perfect substitutes. If they want to do business, if they want what you've got, they've got to come do business with you because there's not a perfect substitute elsewhere. They're going to have to come seek you out. So a USP, unique selling proposition, a source of competitive advantage, that idea of monopolistic competition. How can you determine what you do best to give you a leg up on your competitors, and then also really maybe to prevent your competitors from coming in and taking business away from you? Okay. Next one, product life cycle. So this is from marketing, drawn from a marketing concept. That idea of product life cycle. And I think when you see these, you tend to see a graph that kind of goes up and then drops off. Drawing on the ideas of a human life cycle. We're little bitty, and then we grow, and then we get to be mature, and then we get to a certain point where we decline, and then our bodies eventually wear out. Those same ideas relate back to products, okay, and maybe firms, if firms don't adapt with their offerings. So that introduction phase, this is where it's brand new. Maybe people are unaware of it. Maybe it's a new technology. Maybe it's just a new thing in general. People don't know about it. They're not certain about it. That's the introduction phase. Growth phase. So this is where it starts taking off, and it's growing, and so there is a lot of demand. Maybe even the demand exceeds the supply. So it grows, and then at a certain point, the supply and demand catch up to each other. That's the maturity phase. And then as more and more people have bought this, and maybe it's starting to wear out, maybe substitutes have come in, maybe things have changed in the marketplace, then we start to see a decline. Now, the traditional life cycle is that we just see it die off and then it's done. Okay, think about the weed or something out in my yard. Okay, it grows and then it dies and then it's done. The thing is, with businesses, the goal is to always make yourself relevant, to reinvent. That's that idea of innovation. So innovate, take this thing and change it, improve it, make it better. And then that idea, which I typed on there, making the old new. So if you think about iPhones, I've had an iPhone 5 for a long time until finally I got a message from my carrier saying, we don't support this anymore. You can't use it. And so I bumped up to a 7, and I still carry around a 7. My son, a couple years ago, got an 11, and then my wife, I think she got a 13. It's still an iPhone, but it's an improved iPhone. It's been innovated. There are new characteristics and new features. It fits better with the environment. It's cutting edge for today. Apple continues to innovate and to make the old iPhone into a new iPhone. That's the challenge for you, for us as business owners, making what we offer always relevant. How do we change? How do we update? How do we innovate? How do we stay relevant to the marketplace? So product life cycle, don't just think that it cycles up and drops off. What you want to do is as it gets up to maturity and maybe starts to decline, that you bump it up with some new innovation and you start a new cycle and you start a new cycle. And so these things continue to build up and up and up. Think about it, product, service, luxury, necessity. All of these concepts we've already talked about, all right here in the product life cycle. Okay, the 4 P's of marketing. Again, another marketing concept that we must be aware of. I usually do product, price, place, promotion, and the people was kind of added as kind of the 5th P. but I put price at the last one because of the next slide. So product, we've already talked about that. What is your product? What is your service? All of those concepts. Know what you are offering. Is it innovative? Is it unique? Is it special? How does it meet customer needs? Product. The price has to go, excuse me, place, I want you to think of game theory. Okay, game theory. What do I expect? Jump into the head of your opponent. Jump into the head of your consumer, your customer. What would they expect me to do? One of the things I've discovered is that this idea of cooperation and competition. When you are competing against somebody, you want to be unpredictable. All right, so any game that you play, you want to be unpredictable. You don't want them to know what's next because then they can head that off. When you're cooperating with people, you when we're thinking about cycling, you're cycling in a big group of people. We're cooperating. We're playing racquetball. We're playing doubles. We're playing basketball. You want to be predictable. You want to be predictable when you're cooperating. You want to be unpredictable when you're competing. With place, okay, you almost want to cooperate with your consumers. Okay, you want to be predictable. You want to do what they expect you to do. So with game theory, where would my potential consumers expect to find me? Find my product, find my service, find my location, find my website, find my phone number, find my hours. Where do I need to put myself so that when people look for me, they will find me? Uh, when I started driving, got my first set of keys, my dad said, "Hey kid, some words of advice. This will help you throughout life. Put your keys in places where you would expect to find them. Leave them in the same 2 or 3 or 4 places. And so whenever you have to look for them, you know exactly where they are." Okay, this kind of goes back to that idea of game theory. When your when your possible consumers are looking for you, where would they expect to be? Where would they expect to find you? And you should always be there in their places. So place is also bigger than just that. Place, if you think about the product and it's manufactured in one place and it needs to be in a different place for the consumers to find it, how do you get it there? So do you do warehouses? Do you do wholesale? Do you do your own transportation? Do you do trucks? Do you contract with UPS, with FedEx? How do you get it there? All of those pieces are part of the place dimension as well. Online adds another dimension to this as well. Where would your customers expect to find you online? We'll play with that more in just a little bit. Promotion is how you make yourself noticeable and desirable to people in the marketplace. So making others aware and then encouraging them to come and trade with you, their excess for your excess. Advertising, promotions come into play here. Your logo, just all these different dimensions, making people aware of who you are and what you offer and why it's special and where it would be, and maybe dealing with the price and offering some incentives to come and start doing business. All of that is in the promotion model. So as you're going through these concepts for a potential business idea, realize all of this is 100% relevant to you every single day. Okay, the people dimension was added in. It's being aware of people's needs and interests and desires and abilities and making sure that you fit those. And then lastly on this one, the price dimension. So on price, it has to be, you have to charge enough to make it worthwhile, but it also has to be low enough to entice people. If it's too high, think about supply and demand. If it's too high, you're going to drive people away. They're going to go look for substitutes, or maybe they'll consider you a luxury and do without. So low enough to entice, but high enough to make it worthwhile. Okay, so revenues and cost. Revenue is the amount of money that you bring in at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, at the end of the year. It's determined by your price times your quantity sold. Just a very simple way to think about that. Within this, so revenue is the total amount that you bring in. Within this, it's going to cost you some money to get there. So we talked about our two different types of cost, fixed cost and variable cost. Fixed cost are those things that don't change, kind of whether you're doing business with one or a million. I had a little service business in Texas, and when we were shut down for COVID for 2 months, I had the same bills coming in. I had mortgage that was due each month. I was paying insurance each month. I wasn't using as much in the way of utilities, but we still had those base charges, those fixed delivery fees for my utility. Those are the fixed cost. So whether we got the door shut or whether we got the door open and everybody's there, the fixed costs kind of stay the same over the time period. Variable costs are those things that vary with the level of production. So the more I produce, the more raw materials I'm going to need. The more hours that we're open, the more I'm going to spend on the electricity, the kilowatt hours, and the water used, and all of those ideas. So fixed cost, variable cost. And then the profit is described as excess revenue. So it's the revenue that's brought in above your cost. So as you're analyzing all this, what are my costs? Yeah, I'd really love to have a building, but look how much it would cost. How many people would I need to bring in? Okay, think about a break-even point. How many would I need to bring in or sell to figure out just to get to the point where I've covered my cost, fixed cost, and then the variable cost come into play above and beyond that. So again, just one of these key ideas that we as entrepreneurs need to be aware of when we're trying to figure out if this venture would be viable. All right, let's look at this one. So this, I thought this was something that I'd kind of thought of in my head, but others have done it as well. Ponder this as you're thinking of these ideas. So I want to look at this continuum, and that's kind of what I typed out right here. This continuum, on one side are ventures that are there to make money. They're there to make profit. And then with that money, we can then use that money for a lot of different things in life. Okay, so profit, driven by making money on one end. On the other end of the continuum, the realm of nonprofits, these are organizations that exist to fulfill needs in society that don't necessarily bring in the revenue. Okay, so I need to provide this service. I'm a big fan of music, so music education programs. I want to provide instruments to after-school programs in the community and get in some instructors and come in and teach music. Okay, but we're at a place where the participants are not in a position where they can pay for this. And so we're going to get grants. Think about a museum. We're going to get grants. And through these grants, we will be able to support the fixed and variable cost of this venture and then be able to offer those services. So benefactors. So down on the nonprofit side, we are dependent upon people to help make this happen. Benefactors above and beyond giving to this cause. Profit, those are the ones that through their products and services, they are creating their own money to be able to support themselves. In the middle is this other thing. It's called the social enterprise. These are companies, organizations that exist to do something worthwhile, but in the process, they're actually bringing enough money to support themselves. And then in between social enterprise and nonprofits, I think we've been to a lot of these before where it is a nonprofit. Profit is not the primary motivator, but then people do have to pay fees, or think about a museum. We do have to pay admissions fees to get in there, which helps some of the cost, but I'm sure it's not totally self-sufficient. And then over between social enterprise and profit, there are also companies out there that do make a lot of profit, but they also like to give back in a lot of different ways. So kind of this continuum. And as you're thinking about ideas for a business, I just kind of want to make you, explicitly aware of these ideas. Because you could be out on the profit side, you could be on the nonprofit side, okay? You could be in the middle. You could do something good and worthwhile, but in the process, you're also making enough to be able to cover all your costs and to grow and develop and to offer your service or product, whatever it is, to more people. And then you've also got kind of these little hybrid ones in the middle as well. So we can exist with our companies across that spectrum. Let's look at a different. Okay, how about small scale and large scale? These are just my words. I didn't look them up or try to find theory or other people who've cited these things. But small. I've done this. I used to sell racquetball equipment when we lived in Arkansas. We lived in a part of the state that didn't have high quality sporting good equipment, and so I called a manufacturer and said, "Hey, how about letting me sell your stuff?" And they said that'd be awesome. And so I did it out of my house. It was supplemental. I wasn't planning on that to feed my family. It was extra income above and beyond what I was making. Even a hobby turned into a business. My son, right now, he does drones, flies drones. He just got his commercial pilot's license. So he can now go out and charge people money to go fly around and take video and pictures aerial photography and videography. It was a hobby. And then he realized that he could do this extra certification and turn it into a business. All right. So small business, small scale, maybe not the thing that's going to support you, uh, full cost of living. You may not be out hiring other people, but it's something that can supplement. Even rental houses. We've been in the rental property for 20 something years, have had one or two places that we've rented. Right now I've got a commercial property, and then we've got a place that we do Airbnb. And so we go and enjoy the place, but then other parts of the year we do Airbnb to be able to cover the cost and bring in a little extra income. So small. Medium. So these are going to be larger investments in equipment, facilities, um, inventory, all that stuff. So I just use the concepts, equipment, facilities, and people. So it's a bigger investment. And maybe this is something that you could support yourself and your family on. And then large, I put large and very large. Those in my mind are just, it's major investments, it's scale and scope. And so it's taking this thing that we're big at, we're do well at, and we're big, and going bigger. So instead of just one factory, one location, we're now going to expand, and not just maybe in the region, but we're going to expand across the country, or maybe even around the world. So think about those. So small scale, you can be a small scale entrepreneur. Okay, you can be a medium scale entrepreneur. You could be a large and very large. A lot of the things that we see, if you read Inc. magazine and other things, those are the people who've gone large and very large. But also realize that small and medium are also totally viable. All of these concepts apply to them equally as well. So here we go. All right, so look at this. And those numbers are just simply numbers. So let's think about combining these. So if we took our focus, that nonprofit, social, and profit, and then when you combine it with small, medium, and large scale, we have really kind of 9 different options that we could tap into. So as we're going through this term and talking about entrepreneurship and what's possible and kind of dreaming, well, I really want to do something, but I do this other thing. I'm a professor. I love these concepts, and I've done other things, but really the teaching, it is what I am, and that's what I do. And so if I took off doing one of these other ventures full time, it would take me away from teaching. And so right now I'm good with my little entrepreneurial ventures being what they are, as kind of supplements and kind of fun things to do above and beyond what I really do. So as we go through this, and as you're thinking of ideas, I want you to don't just limit yourself to big. Don't just look at yourself and compare yourself to Walmart or to Amazon, but you can be on the small scale, and that's absolutely fine. All right, think about that. All right, Greiner, and I think we're getting close. So Larry Greiner, this is one that I learned in grad school. It's kind of it was organization theory, kind of management theory ideas. Google, just do a Google, Greiner's growth model, and you can see they've got it on a chart with a 45-degree angle going up. But what he said is that we've got, as organizations grow and become bigger, they tend to go through these different stages, these stage of crisis, and then after the crisis, then something new emerges. So you see, stage 1 is creativity. So think about an entrepreneurial organization starting from the ground. Uh, it's all in the entrepreneur's creativity and ideas and connecting things and making new things happen that haven't been around before. As you grow, as time goes on and you grow, there's going to be a time at which just the individual creativity is not enough. We need some leadership. So these people have come in with us, and yes, I'm the creative one with all these ideas, but now they need some guidance. Where are we going? Where are we going? We can't read your mind. We need help. So the leadership crisis kicks in, and then we bump down to the next stage. And that next stage is the direction. So through leadership, through vision, through here's what we stand for, here's the mission, that helps us grow on to the next stage. Okay, everybody else does understand. Then it's going to get to a certain point where we need some autonomy. So we can't all keep running back to the entrepreneur, to the boss, saying, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Eventually, it's going to come to a point where the people need to make their own decisions. That's the autonomy crisis. And then the next stage is delegation. Okay, so now that you know what needs to be done, okay, that you know the goals, now I'm going to give you the the ability to determine the means to get to those goals or to the ends. That's delegation. So you make the decisions. And so now we've got all these different people making the decisions. As you continue to grow, that's going to create a problem in that there's not control over everybody. So that's the next crisis, is the control crisis. Then, okay, so now we've got everybody controlled. Now we need to, and that leads to coordination. So now we're going to coordinate all the different bodies who are all working together. But then that leads to this idea of red tape, where we have to write everything down. Okay, we have to have formalized procedures and ways of doing things. We have to write it down and come up with rules and procedures. Okay, the next stage is collaboration. The crisis is going to be growth. We continue to grow. And then we form alliances with others and identity. So take a look. I didn't want to just copy something that might be copyrighted as far as a diagram for this presentation. So I just kind of typed them out this way. But if you would just get and do an internet search on Griner's growth model and look at these different stages and crises, you will see those. As aspiring entrepreneurs, people who are studying this stuff, these are things we have to realize. An entrepreneur may be great at starting the business with the energy and the passion and the ideas, but it may get to a point where it gets big. And then it becomes very rules and policy and process oriented. And that's really not what I'm interested in. I like the energy and the ideas and the creativity. Then we may have to pass it on to someone else who is an expert at those things, right? Griner, creativity. Okay, so to me, what I love most about all this is this idea of creativity, which was that first phase back there. This is what I call connecting dots in new and interesting ways. Those dots are things that I like to see in my head that I know. Bits of knowledge, bits of trivia, things that are in there, things that I've seen. It could be language, it could be patterns, it could be shapes, it could be music, it could be numbers, it could be smells, it could be all these different things that are in your head. And in some way you're confronted with a problem and you connect those dots. That's stuff that's filed away in new and interesting ways. Here's an example. So in my current role, my new role, at my university, I wanted a project for my students to work on to do something interesting, to make themselves different and relevant in the marketplace, to make them unique. I do an intro to business class, and in intro to business, we kind of go through these concepts, and they're charged with coming up with a semester-long business project. And I will front them money if they need it, depending on if it's a product or a service. Let them do products and combine things in different ways. So we do projects all semester long, and then I tell them up front, we're going to take the profits and we're going to do something cool with them. So I had 2 semesters, 2 classes of students doing projects. Those students made about $4,000 in profits, just 2 little classes, about 25 and about 20 people. I wanted to do something cool and interesting to make them different. My son has 2 Guinness Book of World Records, and before the school year began, I was on the Guinness website to see if his record still stood, and just kind of browsing around, I found that there was a record for the longest line of sleeping bags. So get all these sleeping bags and you line them up end to end. The record was 253, and it was set in 2016. That didn't seem like a whole lot of sleeping bags to me. So I challenged my students, why don't we break that record? Why don't we collect sleeping bags, line them all up, make a Guinness Book of World Records, and then we give them away to charity? What a cool thing to do. And we were kind of stuck. How do we get people to bring sleeping bags? How do we get people to bring sleeping bags by? And then finally another day, I saw that Academy Sporting Goods has basic sleeping bags for $10. Well, all of a sudden it's not a sleeping bag problem, it's a money problem. What if we could take the intro to business, so there's one dot, intro to business projects, and take the profit, which we said we wanted to do something good for charity with. What if we went out and bought sleeping bags? And then from those sleeping bags, what if we then got linked up with the different homeless shelters and missions in this area, and we're able to distribute? That's what we did. What a cool and interesting way. We ended up with 550 sleeping bags through those business projects, but also through donations. We got people to donate. We got some area churches to donate sleeping bags. We lined them all up. We got the record documented. We were on the news. The students now have something to put on their resume, so they're different in the marketplace. It helps me to promote my school because we're different. We're doing things that other schools nearby are not doing. We're unique. We're giving back to the community, which is also part of it. That's that social dimension right there. And in the process, the students are practicing business. They're actually practicing the things that what a great creative way of connecting seemingly unrelated ideas into a really cool and wonderful solution. I'm sure many of you, most of you have had these experiences before. Jason Silva, and I'll post a link to one of his shots of all videos, but uh, he talks about this thing called cognitive ecstasy. When we as humans make patterns, we make sense of things through creativity. It creates this kind of firestorm in our head of wasn't that cool? Wasn't that cool? And for some of us, it becomes kind of addictive as well. So creativity, overcoming conceptual blocks. Got a wonderful book that talks about creativity and that we as humans, Sir Ken Robinson did a talk on creativity. And he says that a lot of times growing up as kids, everything's possible. But as we become adults and become kind of more realistic, that we kind of exclude a lot of things because that's not feasible. We would never do that. What we're doing is we're squeezing that creativity out of us. And so we have to open that back up and realize that when we're committing these we're breaking the rules for creativity, that we can't do that. So programmed, routine decisions, non-programmed, or non-routine decisions and problems. The entrepreneur, when you start up a business, there are going to be things that are very routine, but then there are going to be a lot of things that you have to figure out yourself. How am I going to lay this out? How am I going to design this? What words do I need to choose in my advertising? Where do I spend this different money? All of these wonderful, interesting problems that are going to come to you as you go through this process. And you have to step above and beyond the ordinary and exert the time and energy to reach into your brain and try to connect things and give yourself time to do that, to come up with some really cool solutions. So you'll hear these themes keep coming back up again and again as we go through this. And lastly, for this presentation, one of the assignments for Sunday is to find your nearest small business development center. So the SBDC, some of you may be aware of this, I bet most of you are not. The Small Business Administration, which receives funding from the government, it's in the U.S. is a big fan of free enterprise and business and small business. And so they want to provide assistance to people who are interested in starting businesses. So there are small business development centers around the country that a lot of them are connected to universities, but not necessarily, that provide free, paid for by the taxpayer, free counseling and assistance to would-be and already existing business people, small business owners. And so free training and consulting. I've been to some of the presentations. I've done a couple of presentations as well, and have visited a number of these across the country. I just want you to be aware of this, that if you are interested, seriously interested in this, starting a business, profit or nonprofit now or in the future, that these resources are available. So not only through the knowledge you gain through your MBA and the ability to study online and to talk with others, but there are these SBDC, Small Business Development Centers, around the country and eager and willing to help you with any question that you might have. So that's it. That's the start of the course. Hope this helps. Again, like I said, we will explore this, and I will post some extra resources as we go through it. And I think you could see, as just going through this, well, I couldn't find a book. There's not a book that has that series of concepts all explored and explained there in the first chapter or two of the book. So we'll give this a shot and hope it'll work. Again, I just want you all to be interested and see that this is a big, fun challenge that you can play with. And it's really cool to see an idea, what was an idea in your head, come into reality and affect people's lives. By starting a business and doing that thing that you're passionate and interested in doing, that you can fundamentally change the lives of other people. That's a really cool and powerful thing. So that's it. We'll have a good first week, and we'll do this again next week. Thanks a lot.